What's up, guys? Welcome to this video. I'm going to be talking about some wide receiver trade targets and some guys that you might want to sell high on. So it's week 7 of the NFL fantasy season 2022. Let's get started. And at the top of my list is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now, a lot of people might think he's not a actual buy target or even a sell target, as most St. Brown owners are probably pretty happy with his performance. They just might not be happy with the fact that he's been injured for the past couple of weeks. So let me just give you my case of why I think he's a sell or a buy candidate. So when he was playing, when he was active, 12 targets, 9 targets. He went, he popped off those couple weeks. So he went 16 points the first week, 35 the second, and then only 10 points in the third week of the season. But he only played 73% of the snaps, so he was very involved for those snaps. But yeah, he got injured, so he has not played since week 5. But in week 5, that's when he got injured. Or he was playing hobbled. I can't quite remember what happened in week 5, but he essentially hasn't been himself since week 2. He hasn't played his full amount of snaps, and he hasn't really been the same guy since week 2. But when he is on the field, he is very involved. He gets a lot of targets. He's Jared Goff's favorite target. You might be able to buy St. Brown now, as owners of St. Brown might be struggling. They might have a losing record. At the end of the day, with most of these trade targets, you want to make sure that the guy you're trading with is not in a position of leverage. So if you're 1-5 or 2-4, and the guy you're trading with is 6-0, he has no reason to trade with you. He has all the leverage. So try to find anyone on this list. Try to find the guys that are on bad teams that are doing poorly in fantasy. So moving along, these next couple of guys, I'll start with Rashard Bateman. So Rashard Bateman hasn't had a good week since week 2. And even in those weeks, he only had his highest was 66% snap percentage for the Ravens. And his workload has been very low. So the most amount of targets he's had was 7 on the season. So he's kind of been their field stretcher. He's been kind of like a big play dependent type of player. But the Ravens really, really, really need him back. So they have looked very bad since he's gotten injured, actually. And that's to be expected. I mean, they're playing with guys like Duvernay, and I couldn't even tell you who else is playing on the team. I mean, what is it? Duvernay, Prochet, Demarcus Robinson. Yeah, Lamar Jackson needs Bateman back. And I think when he is a good buy target because of that. He's been, again, not providing any type of production since week 2. So owners of him are potentially ready to move on. And not, I don't know if they're willing to continue waiting for him to come back and be productive. Now, if he comes back in week 7 and then has a dud game, he is a definite buy candidate. Right now, owners of him might still be waiting to see what happens when he comes back. If they've been sitting on him this long, they might not be willing to give him up, right before he comes back on the eve of his return. So maybe hope he has another dud game on his return, and then maybe he's an even better buy. So next guy after that is Chris Godwin. So this window might actually already be closed. I bought him last week. He's been injured, as you guys know. He came from an ACL injury to start the season, was only played 31% of snaps, sat out the next 2 weeks, came back, played 83% of snaps, had 10 targets. Next week against Atlanta, 6 targets on only 52% of snaps, so they were still kind of holding him back a little bit, but he's been productive in every game that he's played. In the last game, he had 89% of snaps, 12 targets, 6 receptions for 95. Now, the entire Bucs offense kind of struggled. Tom Brady struggled. He was ripping on his offensive line pretty much the entire game. So I'm willing to write that off from a production standpoint. From an opportunity standpoint, that's compelling. 12 targets. He outpaced Mike Evans. He outpaced everyone on the Bucs. Leonard Fournette actually might have had close to 12 targets. If not 12, he definitely had a lot. Let's look. 6, sorry, yeah, half of that. 6 targets. But Leonard Fournette's going to have his production and have his opportunity regardless. So Chris Godwin's window's probably closed. Most Chris Godwin owners are probably like, hell yeah, number 1 wide receiver back for the Bucs. Let's see if he can start getting into the end zone. I mean, that's essentially why you might still be able to buy him. It's because he hasn't been in the end zone yet. So owners of Chris Godwin might be willing to make like a 2-for-2 trade where they're downgrading at wide receiver but upgrading at running back. I think most of these guys on this list are guys that have not been producing like I think they could. So the next guy is T. Higgins. Now, T. Higgins has been great in the games that he has been healthy. 16, 11, and 23 fantasy points from weeks 2 to 4. He looked great. He was like the number one guy on the team. I know everybody loves Jamar Chase, but T. Higgins is definitely Joe Burrow's main threat when it comes to like red zone and stuff like that. Jamar Chase is a guy who could score from anywhere on the field, and a guy who's going to command his targets from anywhere on the field. But T. Higgins seems to be like that clutch type of possession receiver that Joe Burrow really relies on. So he's a guy that I would want to target. 2 weeks now where he's been middling. In week 5 he didn't play, and in week 6 he was he was in the game, he was getting his targets, just wasn't I don't know, he just didn't see him the same. So I think you can buy him now and expect to profit from him the rest of the season. I think he'll be a very good wide receiver too. And the last guy on this buy list is Deebo Samuel. Now, Deebo Samuel has been fantastic. He hasn't been below 10 fantasy points in half PPR, which I will take. Like, yes, he's only had one blow up game in week 4 versus the Rams when he exploded Jalen Ramsey, broke his ankles, ran around him, and scored a touchdown on a long touchdown, which you can call that fluky, which I would hardly contend with that. Because it kind of is. I mean, anytime you see a long touchdown being scored, you can, I guess, say, especially on like a missed tackle type thing, like Jamar Chase's touchdown in week 6, his second touchdown, in week 6. Yeah, like, I don't know. Deebo Samuel has just been great. He's been fantastic. He's been active. You know, his target count seems to be rising as the season goes on. As you could see, it's like 7, 6, 8, 7, 9, 10. Next week, hopefully 11, 12, 13, 14. He's still a buy. He hasn't had many pop-off weeks, which is what you want to see from a guy who's been active but has only popped off once. So to me, that's like a buy candidate. Now let's move along to the sell candidates. So I'll keep this pretty short because this is a pretty easy list. If you have any of these guys, you probably already know that you want to sell them. And essentially, when you want to sell players, you want to sell them after they pop off. That's fucking common sense. Juju SmithSchuster is the first on that list. So I've been holding Juju all season. He's been doing nothing for me all season. I finally benched him last week, and then he pops off against the Bills. I guess I should have trusted the process where a high over-under game, you just want to start players who are in those games. But even then, he only had 5 targets, 113 yards and a touchdown, of which like 40 and that touchdown came on one broken play where he like broke 3 tackles, like bounced off 3 defenders. So you take away that 40-yard touchdown, he's 5 for 60, 5 for 70, no touchdowns. Are you really that happy with that? No, I wouldn't be. You can potentially sell him, attach him to the name of Patrick Mahomes, see if anybody's willing to bite on that. If you have any half-wits or simpletons in your league, just see if you can sell Juju to them. Everybody has a league half-wit, or a league taco, as we like to call it. And moving along to the next one, which is Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool is a mercurial or strange player to me because he's been pretty active or pretty involved in most of their games, especially from like a snap percentage point of view. He is like the bona fide number 2 for the team from a target standpoint. It's Deontay, it's Claypool, then it's Pickens. I know everybody thinks that it's Pickens season, but it's not yet. It's really not, especially from a target standpoint. It's definitely still Claypool and Deontay. Pickens is kind of making his way up slowly, and especially in the red zone, he's getting a lot of red zone looks. But I think Claypool. For the purpose of this video, I'm not going to go too far into the Steelers offense. But Claypool, he just had a nice pop off game. He looked great in the game, and the reason I say he's mercurial is because it's like, do you want to sell him when he seems like he's finally turning the corner? Like he finally had that corner turn game, and then you sell him, and then what if he continues this? But I guess that's the fear for most like sell high candidates. But yeah, I think Claypool is a sell candidate. I'd rather not risk it. I'd rather not like have a guy who he gets you these 4-point weeks, these 3-point weeks, especially because he's attached to a quarterback who I don't think is just like ready, especially for that division. That division's really tough. And yeah, I'll try to sell Claypool if I can. If anybody's willing to take a flyer on him, is willing, maybe a team who's 5-1 or 6-0, who can just sit on him, who has a guy at their end of their bench who they don't really need right now, and they might be willing to sit on a guy like Claypool, see if he continues to develop as Pickett continues to develop. So that's like the narrative you can try to spin. And then the last guy on my list is Allen Robinson. Again, another pretty. I imagine he's probably a little bit difficult to sell because he had such high draft capital in fantasy, and he's been, talked up. He's been gassed up. They've been saying that they want to get him involved and get him the ball, and that it's just a matter of scheme, or it just didn't happen that way. And in week 2 he had a squeaky wheel type of thing. He had that touchdown, 50 yards in week 2, and then he went right back to being a squeaky wheel. They greased him, and then it got rusty the very next day. So, and then boom, week 6 he pops off. He had some fantastic catches, dude. He's like apex top of the high point of the ball, came down, mossed his defender in the end zone, and he did that like 2 or 3 times during the game. And he just looked hype. He's like, fucking finally. Like, I don't know. I would still probably try to sell him on that. Maybe there's a guy who was watching that game, a Rams fan. He was like, dude, Allen Robinson's a fucking beast, dude. Again, find the league taco, find the half-wit, try see if you could shop him Allen Robinson. And yeah, that's my list. Just 3 guys. I mean, there's probably tons of other guys. Hit me up in the comments if there's another sell high candidate, or hit me up if you guys have any like trade ideas. If any of these guys are on your list and you have a trade in mind, hit me up. I'll give you my input. Hit me up on Twitter too. I'll give you my thoughts, and I'll let you know if I would make that trade or not. But I hope this video was helpful. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Like and subscribe, and take care, guys.